How could I be so stupid? It was heading for disaster from the start.
The champagne glass hit the marble countertop with a sharp clink that cut through the dinner party chatter like a knife through silk. My wife Marta stood there, swaying slightly in her designer dress, her lips curved in that smile I'd learned to fear over our 23 years of marriage. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, her voice carrying that particular edge it got when she'd had 3 glasses of wine instead of her usual 2. The conversation around our dining room table died instantly. 8 faces turned toward her, including mine, though I already felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach. I'm David Monroe, and I used to think I had the perfect life. 47 years old, senior accountant at Henderson & Associates, father to 2 college kids who still called me on Sundays, and husband to Marta, the creative director at Pinnacle Advertising who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank her for it, used to think, past tense, because 3 months ago everything I believed about my marriage turned out to be as real as a $3 bill. To my dear husband David, Marta continued, raising her glass higher. Our guests, her sister Victoria, my old college buddy Trent, the Johnsons from next door, and Greg Waters, Marta's business partner who'd been spending an awful lot of time at our house lately, all lifted their glasses dutifully. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there for months, maybe years. The late nights at the office that smelled suspiciously like expensive cologne when she came home. The way she'd started dressing differently, buying lingerie I never saw her wear. The phone calls that stopped abruptly when I walked into a room. But I'm an accountant. I deal in numbers, facts, concrete evidence. I don't make assumptions, I verify. And boy, had I verified. To the man who pays all the bills, Marta said, her words slightly slurred now, but never learned how to satisfy a woman in bed. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ice maker cycling in the kitchen. Victoria's face went pale. Trent's eyebrows shot up to his hairline. Mrs. Johnson actually gasped. Greg Waters tried to look shocked, but I caught the slight smirk he couldn't quite suppress. That smirk told me everything I needed to know about who'd been satisfying my wife lately. "Marta," Victoria whispered. "Maybe you should..." "Should what?" Marta snapped. "Tell the truth for once? David's a good provider, I'll give him that. Steady, reliable, boring as watching paint dry, but reliable." I set down my own glass carefully, my hands surprisingly steady. 23 years of marriage, and she just humiliated me in front of our closest friends and family. The old David would have made excuses, tried to laugh it off, maybe blamed the wine. But the old David didn't know what I knew now. "Well," I said, standing up slowly, "I suppose everyone's entitled to their opinion." I walked to our antique china cabinet and pulled out a manila folder I'd hidden behind the serving platters earlier that evening. The folder was thick, stuffed with photographs, printed emails, credit card statements, and hotel receipts. "Since we're sharing truths tonight," I continued, opening the folder, "maybe our guests would be interested in some other facts." Marta's face went from flushed to pale in about 2 seconds. "David, what are you—" "For instance," I said, pulling out a photograph and placing it on the table where everyone could see it. "This picture of you and Greg at the Riverside Hotel last Tuesday. You told me you were at a client dinner." The photograph was crystal clear, taken with the telephoto lens I'd borrowed from Trent's security company. Marta and Greg in the hotel parking lot, locked in an embrace that was definitely not professional. "Or this one," I continued, laying down another photo. "From 3 weeks ago at that little bed and breakfast in Vermont. You said it was a girls' weekend with Victoria." Victoria's mouth fell open. "I was at my book club that weekend." "You know that." "Oh, I know," I said. "I called to check." Greg finally found his voice. "Now wait just a minute." "No, Greg. You wait." I pulled out a stack of printed emails. "These are from your company email account. Quite steamy, actually. Should I read some of the highlights, or would you prefer to explain to your wife, Susan, yourself?" Greg's face had gone from smug to panicked. "How did you get those? That's illegal." "Actually, it's not," Trent interjected, speaking for the first time since Marta's toast. "Corporate email belongs to the company, and Pinnacle's IT department has been very cooperative with David's inquiries, especially after he showed them the evidence of you two using company resources for personal activities. I'd forgotten to mention that Trent wasn't just my college buddy. He was also a former police detective who now ran a private security firm. Very handy when you need someone who knows the legal ins and outs of gathering evidence." "David, please," Marta said, her voice shaking now. "Can we discuss this privately?" "Like you discussed your affair privately?" I asked. "For how long, Marta?" The hotel receipts go back 8 months, but I'm guessing it started before that. The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Our guests sat frozen, like they were watching a car crash in slow motion. "I think," Mrs. Johnson said quietly, "perhaps we should leave." "No," I said firmly. "Please stay. I'd like witnesses for what comes next." I pulled out the final document from the folder. "This is a petition for divorce filed this morning. And this," I held up another paper, "is a restraining order against Greg Waters, effective immediately. He's not allowed within 500 feet of my house, my workplace, or my family." Greg shot to his feet. "You can't do this." "I already did," I replied calmly. "Oh, and Greg? I also sent copies of those emails to your wife, your boss, and the company's board of directors. I imagine you'll be hearing from them soon." Marta was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "David, I can explain." "Actually, you can't," I said, closing the folder, "because I've heard enough lies to last me a lifetime." I looked around the table at our guests. "I apologize for the drama, folks, but I thought you should know why Marta and I won't be hosting dinner parties anymore." As I walked toward the stairs, I heard Greg's chair scrape against the floor and his footsteps behind me. "You think you're so smart," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." I turned to face him, and for the first time that evening, I smiled. "Actually, Greg, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. A middle-aged man having a midlife crisis with another man's wife. It's pathetic, really." Greg's face flushed red. "Marta loves me. She's been miserable with you for years." "Then she'll be happy to start over," I said. "Alone." 3 days after what I'd started calling the dinner party massacre, my phone hadn't stopped ringing. Not with sympathy calls, mind you. With accusations. "David, what the hell were you thinking?" Victoria's voice crackled through my cell phone as I sat in my office, trying to focus on quarterly reports instead of the implosion of my personal life. "I was thinking about 23 years of marriage down the drain," I replied, not looking up from my computer screen. "But thanks for your concern. Marta made a mistake." 8 months of hotel receipts isn't a mistake, Victoria. It's a pattern. "She's staying with me now," Victoria continued. "She's devastated. She says you've frozen all the accounts." "Joint accounts," I corrected. "I froze the joint accounts. Marta still has access to her personal checking and savings. She's just going to have to learn to live within her means instead of mine." That was the beauty of being an accountant married to a creative type. Marta had always been happy to let me handle the finances. What she didn't realize was that over the years, I'd been very careful about how we structured our assets. The house was in my name only, inherited from my parents. The investment accounts were separate. Even her precious BMW was leased through my company. "You're being vindictive," Victoria said. "I'm being practical," I replied. Marta wanted to toast my inadequacies in front of our friends. I thought it was only fair to share some of her achievements as well. I hung up, and immediately the phone rang again. This time it was my daughter Amelia, calling from her dorm at Northwestern. "Dad, what's going on? Mom called crying, saying you kicked her out of the house." "I didn't kick her out, sweetheart. I filed for divorce and she chose to leave. She said you humiliated her in front of everyone." I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. This was the conversation I'd been dreading. "Amy, your mother has been having an affair with her business partner for at least 8 months. I have photographs, emails, hotel receipts." "Oh, God." Amelia's voice went small. "Dad, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, honey, or your brother's. This is between your mother and me." "Is it true what she said about you never—" I felt my face burn. "What happens between married people in private should stay private. Your mother chose to make it public." "She's always been dramatic," Amelia said quietly. "Even when Ross and I were kids, everything was always about her." That stung because it was true. Marta had a way of making herself the center of every story, every crisis, every celebration. I'd just been too blind to see it clearly. "Are you okay, Dad? Really?" "I'm angry," I admitted, "and hurt, but I'll be fine." After I hung up with Amelia, I tried to get back to work, but my concentration was shot. Every few minutes, someone would walk past my office and give me a look. Some sympathetic, others curious, a few that seemed almost accusatory. Word travels fast in a small company, and apparently Trent had filled in some of the details for anyone who asked. By lunchtime, half the office knew about Marta's affair and my very public response. "Monroe." My boss, Jim Henderson, appeared in my doorway. "My office, now." I followed him down the hall, wondering if my personal drama was about to cost me my job, too. Jim closed the door behind us and gestured to a chair. I heard about what happened, he said without preamble. How are you holding up? I've been better, I admitted. I also heard that Greg Waters has been terminated from Pinnacle Advertising. I tried to look surprised. Really? Really, apparently using company resources for personal affairs is grounds for immediate dismissal. Who knew? Jim's expression was deadpan, but I caught the slight smile at the corner of his mouth. I imagine his wife wasn't thrilled either, I said. Susan Waters is a client of ours, Jim continued. Has been for years. She called this morning to thank us for bringing the situation to her attention. I blinked. She thanked us? Apparently, she's been suspicious for months, but couldn't prove anything. Your evidence gave her exactly what she needed for her own divorce proceedings. I didn't know Susan was a client. Corporate tax preparation, Jim explained. She inherited a small fortune from her father and needed help managing the tax implications. Anyway, she wanted me to tell you that Greg won't be bothering you anymore. She's making sure of that. I didn't ask what that meant. I'd learned that sometimes it's better not to know the details. Take the rest of the week off, Jim said. Get your head straight. But David, next time you want to destroy someone's life, maybe give me a heads up first. I would have made popcorn. The thing about public humiliation is that it reveals who your real friends are. By the end of the week, I'd discovered I had fewer than I thought. You went too far, man. This from Mike Patterson, who I'd known since high school. We were sitting in O'Malley's bar, the same place we'd been meeting for drinks every Friday for the past 15 years. Did I? I asked, taking a sip of my beer. How far is too far when your wife of 23 years announces to a dinner party that you're lousy in bed? She was drunk, said Tom Bradley, another member of our little group. People say stupid things when they're drunk. And people do stupid things when they're sober, I replied. Like, have affairs. Look, we all knew Marta could be difficult, Mike continued. But what you did was cruel. You destroyed her career, her reputation. She destroyed her own career when she decided to sleep with her business partner, I interrupted. I just made sure everyone knew about it. You made sure everyone knew about it in the most humiliating way possible, Tom said. In front of her sister, her friends, the same people she humiliated me in front of, I pointed out. That's different, Mike said. How? Because... Mike struggled for words. Because she's a woman, I stared at him. So women get a pass for cheating because of their gender? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. I set down my beer and looked around the table. Our usual group of 6 had dwindled to 3. The others had found excuses not to come tonight. We've been friends for 30 years, Tom said. Don't let this destroy that, too. I'm not destroying anything, I replied. I'm just not pretending anymore that what Marta did was okay. Nobody's saying it was okay, Mike said. But your response was disproportionate. Disproportionate? I rolled the word around in my mouth like it tasted bad. 8 months of lies, deception, and cheating, but my response was disproportionate. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. You know what, guys? I think I need some new friends. Ones who don't think cheating is a minor character flaw that should be handled with discretion. David, come on, Tom called as I headed for the door. Don't be like this. I turned back. Like what? Like someone who refuses to be a doormat? Like someone who stands up for himself when he's been betrayed by the person he trusted most in the world? Like someone who's become bitter and vindictive, Mike said quietly. That stopped me cold. You know what, Mike? You're right. I am bitter. And maybe I am vindictive. But I'm also done being the nice guy who gets walked all over. I left them sitting there and walked out into the cold October night. My phone buzzed with a text from Trent. How did it go with the boys? I texted back. About as well as expected. Apparently, I'm the villain in this story. Their loss, came his immediate reply. Beer at my place? Trent lived in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. It was the kind of place Marta would have called trying too hard, but I'd always liked it. It felt honest somehow. So, he said, handing me a bottle of craft beer, Mike and Tom think you're a monster? More or less. I settled into one of his leather chairs. They think I went too far. Did you? I considered the question seriously. I don't know, maybe, but I don't regret it. Good, Trent said. Regret is a luxury you can't afford right now. What do you mean? I mean, Marta isn't done fighting. Neither is Greg, for that matter. Greg's finished, I said. He lost his job, his wife filed for divorce. And he blames you for all of it, Trent interrupted. Men like Greg don't take responsibility for their actions. They find someone else to blame. So, what are you saying? I'm saying watch your back and maybe change your locks. As if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Trent advised. But I was curious. I picked up. Hello? Heavy breathing then. You think you've won, but this isn't over. Greg's voice slurred with alcohol and thick with rage. Actually, Greg, it is over, I said calmly. You lost your job, your wife, and your reputation. There's nothing left to fight about. I'll destroy you, he snarled. I'll make you pay for what you did to Marta. What I did to Marta? I laughed. I didn't do anything to Marta. You did, when you decided to sleep with another man's wife. She was miserable with you. She needed someone who could appreciate her. Then she should have divorced me before she started appreciating you, I replied. But that would have meant giving up the house, the cars, the lifestyle I provided. You coward. I hung up and looked at Trent. I think you might be right about changing the locks. Greg Waters, it turned out, was not the type to go quietly into that good night. I discovered this when I arrived at my office Monday morning to find 2 police officers waiting for me. David Monroe. The older one, a sergeant named Martinez, showed me his badge. That's me. What can I do for you, officers? We need to ask you some questions about Greg Waters. My stomach dropped. What about him? He filed a complaint alleging that you've been bothering him, threatening phone calls, following him, vandalizing his property. I blinked. That's ridiculous. I have a restraining order against him, not the other way around. Yes, we're aware of that, Martinez said. But he claims you've been violating it by continuing to contact him. I haven't contacted him at all, I said. He called me Friday night, drunk, making threats. Do you have proof of that? I pulled out my phone and showed them the call log. Here, Friday, 11:47 p.m. The call lasted 3 minutes, Martinez made a note. We'll need to verify that with your phone company. Be my guest, I said. What else is he claiming? That you keyed his car and put something in the air vents that made it smell terrible? I couldn't help myself. I grinned. That's creative, but no. I haven't been anywhere near Greg's car. Where were you last Thursday evening between 6 and 8 p.m.? At my daughter's parent-teacher conference at Northwestern, I said. I can give you the professor's name and contact information. The younger officer spoke up. He also claims you've been spreading lies about him to damage his reputation. I haven't spread any lies, I replied. I've shared some truths, but they're all documented. Would you like to see the evidence? Martinez held up a hand. That won't be necessary right now. But Mr. Monroe, I have to ask, are you planning any further action against Mr. Waters? No, I said honestly. I'm done with Greg Waters. I just want him to stay away from me and my family. After the police left, I called Trent. Greg's trying to flip the script, I told him. He's claiming I'm bothering him. Predictable, Trent said. Classic abuser tactic. When you can't deny what you did, claim you're actually the sufferer. The police seem skeptical of his claims. They should be. But David, you need to be extra careful now. No contact with Greg or Marta whatsoever. Don't give them any ammunition. I haven't been in contact with either of them. Good. Keep it that way. But apparently Marta had other plans. She was waiting in my driveway when I got home from work, sitting in her BMW with the engine running. I pulled into the garage and closed the door behind me, but she must have seen me because she started pounding on the side door. David, I know you're in there. We need to talk. I ignored her and went inside. A few minutes later, my landline rang. I'm not leaving until you talk to me, Marta's voice said when I picked up. Then you're going to be there for a very long time, I replied. David, please. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I laughed bitterly. Forgetting to pick up milk is a mistake. Having an affair for 8 months is a choice. I was lonely, she said. You were always working, and when you were home, you barely talked to me. So you decided to talk to Greg instead, with your clothes off. Don't be crude. Don't be a hypocrite, I shot back. You had no problem being crude at our dinner party. I was drunk. I didn't mean what I said. Which part didn't you mean? The part about me being boring, or the part about being bad in bed? Silence on the other end. That's what I thought. I said, Marta, we're done. The divorce papers have been filed. Find yourself a lawyer and let's get this over with. I don't want a divorce, she said quietly. I want to work things out. There's nothing to work out. You chose Greg over me. Live with that choice. Greg was a mistake, she said. I see that now. He's weak and selfish and married, I finished, just like you were. David, I love you. No, you don't, I said. You love what I provide, the house, the cars, the lifestyle, but you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have spent 8 months in hotel rooms with another man. I hung up and unplugged the phone. Then I closed all the blinds and settled in to wait her out. She stayed until almost midnight, alternating between pounding on the doors and sitting in her car crying. I watched her through the upstairs window, feeling something I didn't expect. Pity. 23 years of marriage, and it had come to this. My wife sitting in our driveway like a stalker, begging for forgiveness I couldn't give. Around 11:45, a police car pulled up. I watched as an officer got out and approached Marta's car. They talked for a few minutes. Then she drove away, and the officer left. My phone buzzed with a text from Trent. Saw the police report. Marta was cited for trespassing. You okay? I'm fine, I texted back. Just tired. This is going to get worse before it gets better, he replied. He was right. Over the next 2 weeks, Marta and Greg launched what could only be described as a coordinated campaign to make my life miserable. It started small, hang-up calls at all hours. My garbage cans mysteriously tipped over every Tuesday morning. Someone kept ordering pizza deliveries to my house. Always paid for, so technically not illegal, but annoying as hell. Then it escalated. Mr. Monroe? The woman on the phone sounded official. This is Janet from Riverside Elementary. We need you to come pick up your son immediately. I don't have a son at Riverside Elementary, I said. My kids are both in college. But we have you listed as the emergency contact for Tommy Monroe, age 7. I closed my eyes. Ma'am, someone is playing a prank. I don't have a 7-year-old son named Tommy. This happened 3 more times that week with different schools. Someone had been calling around, claiming to be enrolling children and listing me as the emergency contact. Then there were the magazine subscriptions, dozens of them. Everything from Knitting Today to Exotic Reptile Enthusiast, all charged to credit cards I'd never heard of, all sent to my address. This is harassment, I told Trent over lunch. It has to be illegal. It is, he agreed. But proving it was Marta and Greg is the tricky part. They're being careful not to leave fingerprints. So what do I do? Document everything and maybe consider a security system. That afternoon, I came home to find my front yard had been toilet papered. Not just a few rolls, it looked like someone had bought out the entire paper goods aisle at Costco. Every tree, bush, and shrub was draped in white. Mrs. Johnson from next door came over as I was cleaning up. I'm so sorry, David, she said. I saw who did it, but I was afraid to come out. Who was it? That man from your dinner party. Greg, I think. And 2 younger men I didn't recognize. What time was this? Around 2 o'clock. I called the police, but they said unless I had video evidence, there wasn't much they could do. I thanked her and finished cleaning up, but I was seething. Greg was escalating, bringing in reinforcements. That night, I called a security company and had cameras installed around the perimeter of my house. If Greg wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had evidence. I didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, at 3:17 a.m., my new security system woke me with an alert. Someone was in my backyard. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the camera app. 3 figures in dark clothing were spray painting something on my garage door. I called 911, then Trent. They're here now, I whispered into the phone. 3 of them, vandalizing my garage. Police on the way? Yes. Stay inside. Let the cameras do their job. The intruders were gone by the time the police arrived, but they'd left their mark, spray painted across my garage door in red letters, cheater and liar. The security footage was crystal clear. Greg Waters and 2 other men, faces clearly visible, vandalizing my property. Now we've got them, Officer Martinez said, reviewing the footage on my phone. This is criminal mischief, trespassing, and harassment. We'll have warrants out by morning. Greg was arrested at his apartment the next afternoon. The 2 men with him turned out to be his cousins, visiting from out of state. All 3 were charged with multiple misdemeanors, but Greg's arrest only seemed to make Marta more desperate. She started showing up at my workplace, waiting in the parking lot when I got off work. She'd follow me to the grocery store, to the gas station, anywhere I went, always staying just far enough away to avoid violating any laws, but close enough to make her presence known. She's trying to wear you down, Trent observed. Make you so tired of the harassment that you'll agree to reconcile just to make it stop. It's not going to work, I said. I know that, but she doesn't. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in November. I was working late at the office, trying to catch up on some quarterly reports, when the security guard called my extension. Mr. Monroe, there's a woman here who says she's your wife. She's demanding to see you. Tell her I'm not available, I said. I did, sir. She's causing a scene in the lobby. I sighed. I'll be right down. Marta was pacing back and forth in front of the security desk, her face flushed and her hair disheveled. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. David, she called when she saw me. Finally, we need to talk. No, we don't, I said calmly. And you need to leave. This is private property. I'm not leaving until you listen to me, she said, her voice rising. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Because I don't want to talk to you, I interrupted. We're getting divorced, Marta. There's nothing left to discuss. There's everything to discuss, she shouted. Our marriage, our life together, our future. We don't have a future, I said. You made sure of that when you decided to sleep with Greg. She slapped me. The sound echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. The security guard was already reaching for his radio when I held up a hand to stop him. That's a tack, I said quietly, touching my cheek where her hand had connected. In front of witnesses. Marta's face went pale. David, I didn't mean... Yes, you did, I said. Just like you meant everything else you've done over the past 2 months. The harassment, the stalking, the vandalism. I don't know what you're talking about. The pizza deliveries, the magazine subscriptions, the fake school emergencies. Did you really think I wouldn't figure out it was you? She started crying then, big heaving sobs that shook her whole body. I just want my life back, she wailed. I want us back. That life is over, I said. You ended it when you chose to betray our marriage. The police arrived a few minutes later. The security guard had called them despite my gesture. Marta was arrested for attack and trespassing. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. I love you, she said. No, I replied. You love the idea of me. There's a difference. The attack charge against Marta was eventually dropped. First offense, good lawyer, promised to stay away from me and my workplace. But it seemed to break something in her. The harassment stopped. The late-night phone calls ended. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing from either her or Greg. I should have known it was the calm before the storm. It was a Friday night in early December. I'd been working late again, trying to finish year-end reports before the holidays. The office building was nearly empty when I finally packed up to leave around 9 p.m. The parking garage was dimly lit and echoing with the sound of my footsteps. I was halfway to my car when I heard other footsteps behind me. I turned to see Greg Waters emerging from behind a concrete pillar, flanked by the same 2 cousins who'd helped him vandalize my garage. Well, well, Greg said, his voice carrying that same arrogant tone I remembered from dinner parties. If it isn't the man who destroyed my life. I didn't destroy your life, Greg, I replied, calculating the distance to my car and to the nearest exit. You did that all by yourself when you decided to sleep with my wife. Your wife came to me, he snarled. She was desperate for a real man, someone who could satisfy her. And yet, here you are, I said, unemployed, divorced, and facing criminal charges. Quite the satisfaction you provided. One of his cousins, a thick-set man with tattoos covering his forearms, cracked his knuckles. You want us to shut him up, Greg? Not yet, Greg said. I want him to understand something first. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. It was a photo of my house, taken from across the street. Nice place, he said. Shame if something happened to it. Are you threatening me? I asked. I'm explaining reality, Greg replied. You cost me everything, my job, my wife, my reputation. Now it's time for you to pay. What do you want? I want you to call off the divorce. I want you to take Marta back. And I want you to publicly apologize for the lies you spread about us. I almost laughed. You want me to apologize for exposing your affair? It wasn't an affair, Greg said. It was love, something you wouldn't understand. Love? I shook my head. You were both married to other people. That's not love, Greg. That's selfishness. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, I interrupted. I know that you pursued a married woman because you were bored with your own marriage. I know that Marta went along with it because she liked the excitement of sneaking around. And I know that neither of you gave a damn about the people you were hurting. Greg's face flushed red. "You sanctimonious coward. You think you're so much better than us." "I don't think I'm better than you," I said. "I know I am. Because when I made a commitment to someone, I kept it." That's when he swung at me. I'd been expecting it, so I managed to duck most of the punch, but his fist still caught me on the shoulder and sent me stumbling backward. His cousins moved to flank me, cutting off my escape routes. "Feel better?" I asked, straightening up. "Because attack isn't going to solve your problems." "Maybe not," Greg said, shaking out his hand. "But it'll make me feel a hell of a lot better." He nodded to his cousins, and they started moving toward me. That's when the parking garage filled with the sound of squealing tires and flashing lights. 3 police cars roared up the ramp and surrounded us, officers jumping out with weapons drawn. "Nobody move!" one of them shouted. "Hands where we can see them." Greg and his cousins froze, confusion written all over their faces. "David Monroe?" one of the officers called. "That's me," I replied, raising my hands. "Are you injured, sir?" "Just a bruised shoulder," I said. As the police handcuffed Greg and his cousins, I pulled out my phone and showed them the recording I'd been making since the conversation started. "Threats, attack, conspiracy," I said. "It's all right here." Later, as I was giving my statement at the police station, Officer Martinez shook his head. "Some people never learn," he said. Greg Waters was already facing charges for the vandalism. Now he's looking at attack, making terroristic threats, and conspiracy. What about his cousins? Attack, conspiracy, probably some weapons charges when we search them. They won't be bothering you again. "How did you know to come to the parking garage?" I asked. Martinez smiled. "Anonymous tip. Someone saw 3 men following you and called it in." I had a pretty good idea who that someone was, but I didn't ask. The next morning, Trent called. "Heard you had some excitement last night," he said. "Greg decided to make one last play," I replied. "It didn't work out well for him." "I imagine not. By the way, you might want to check your email." I opened my laptop and found a message from an attorney I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Regarding Marta Monroe." The email was brief. "Mrs. Monroe has instructed me to inform you that she will not be contesting the divorce. She agrees to all terms as outlined in your petition and asks only that the proceedings be completed as quickly as possible." I read it twice, then called the number at the bottom of the email. "This is David Monroe," I told the attorney when he answered. "I just received your email about my wife." "Yes, Mr. Monroe. Mrs. Monroe was quite clear that she wants to finalize the divorce immediately. She's prepared to sign all necessary documents." "Did she say why?" "She mentioned that recent events had made her realize the marriage was truly over. She also wanted me to convey her apologies for the harassment you've experienced." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring out at the December snow falling in my backyard. 23 years of marriage, and it was ending with a phone call from a lawyer I'd never met. My phone buzzed with a text from Amelia. "Heard about what happened with Greg. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I texted back. "Better than fine, actually." "Mom called," she replied. "She's moving to Florida, says she needs a fresh start." "That's probably for the best," I wrote. "Dad, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." I smiled as I typed my response. "Thanks, sweetheart. I'm proud of me, too." 6 months later, on a warm Saturday evening in June, I found myself standing in my backyard, hosting my first dinner party since the infamous night that started it all. The guest list was smaller this time, but the company was better. Trent was there with his new girlfriend, Sarah. My kids had driven in from college. Even Mrs. Johnson from next door had joined us, along with a few colleagues from work who'd stuck by me through the whole ordeal. "So," Amelia said as we gathered around the patio table, "whatever happened to Greg Waters?" "Last I heard, he was working at a car dealership in Tampa," Trent replied, "selling used Hondas." "And Mom?" Ross asked quietly. "Living in a condo in Sarasota," I said. "She seems content." The divorce had been finalized in February. Marta had indeed agreed to all my terms, taking only her personal belongings and her car. The house, the investments, even her precious BMW, all mine now. "I still can't believe she thought she could get away with it," Sarah said. She was a prosecutor, sharp and direct in a way I found refreshing after years of Marta's manipulations. "She did get away with it," I replied, "for 8 months. But not forever," Mrs. Johnson added. "The truth has a way of coming out." As the evening wound down and our guests began to leave, Trent lingered behind to help me clean up. "You know," he said, stacking plates, "I never thought I'd say this, but Marta did you a favor." "How do you figure?" "Look at you." 6 months ago you were a doormat. Now you're, I don't know, different, stronger. I considered that as I scraped leftovers into the garbage disposal. He wasn't wrong. The man who'd sat silently through Marta's humiliating toast was gone, replaced by someone who wouldn't tolerate being disrespected or taken for granted. I suppose betrayal has its benefits, I said. If you survive it, you didn't just survive it, Trent replied. You won. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back deck, looking out at the garden Marta had once tended. It was overgrown now, wild and a little chaotic, but somehow more beautiful than when she'd kept it perfectly manicured. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my chest tightened. Old habits die hard. But when I opened it, I found a message from Susan Waters, Greg's ex-wife. Saw the engagement announcement in the paper, it read. Congratulations, she looks lovely. I smiled. Sarah and I had been dating for 3 months now, and I'd proposed just last week. The announcement had run in Sunday's paper, a small item, but apparently people were still paying attention to my life. Thank you, I texted back. How are you doing? Wonderful, came her immediate reply. Turns out life after a cheating spouse is pretty great. Who knew? Indeed, who knew? As I sat there in the gathering dusk, I thought about that night 6 months ago when Marta had raised her glass and delivered the toast that changed everything. At the time, it had felt like the end of the world. My marriage, my friendships, my comfortable life, all of it had crumbled in the space of a few cruel sentences. But maybe Trent was right. Maybe Marta had done me a favor. I raised my wine glass to the empty yard. To new beginnings, I said aloud, and to the courage to take them. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to the farmer's market downtown. Sarah was coming over for brunch, and I wanted to surprise her with fresh flowers for the table. As I was picking out roses at one of the vendor stalls, I heard a familiar voice behind me. David? I turned to see Victoria, Marta's sister, looking uncertain and a little embarrassed. Hello, Victoria, I said politely. I wanted to apologize, she said, for that night, and for the things I said afterward. You were defending your sister, I replied. I understand. No, you don't understand. She shook her head. I knew, David, about the affair. I'd known for months. That stopped me cold. You knew? Marta told me everything. She was so excited about Greg, about how he made her feel. She said you were boring, predictable, that she deserved better. I felt that familiar anger rising in my chest, but I pushed it down. Why are you telling me this now? Because I was wrong, Victoria said, tears in her eyes. You weren't boring or predictable. You were loyal and decent and faithful, and my sister threw that away for excitement. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is from Marta, she said. She asked me to give it to you if I ever saw you. I took the envelope but didn't open it. How is she? Lonely, Victoria admitted. She thought Greg would leave his wife for her, but when everything came out, he blamed her for ruining his life. She's been alone in Florida for months now. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Are you really? Victoria asked. Sorry, I thought about it. I'm sorry she's unhappy, but I'm not sorry she's facing the consequences of her choices. Victoria nodded. That's fair. More than fair, actually. After she left, I sat in my car and opened Marta's letter. It was short, written in her familiar handwriting. David, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I don't blame you. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, and I realize now how selfish and cruel I was. You deserve better than what I gave you, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for the toast, for the affair, for all the pain I caused. I hope you can find happiness with someone who appreciates what a good man you are. Marta? I read it twice, then folded it back up. It was a nice apology, and maybe even sincere. But it didn't change anything. The trust was broken, the marriage was over, and we were both better off apart. I drove home to find Sarah already there, setting the table on the back deck. How was the market? She asked, kissing me hello. Interesting, I said, handing her the roses. I ran into Marta's sister. Oh? How did that go? I told her about the conversation in the letter as we prepared brunch together. Sarah listened without judgment, asking questions but not offering advice. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? She asked finally. I already have, I realized as I said it. Not because she deserves it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, Sarah said. No, I agreed. It doesn't. As we sat down to eat, Sarah raised her orange juice glass. What are we toasting? I asked. She smiled. To the man who taught me that integrity matters more than excitement. I clinked my glass against hers. And to the woman who showed me that love doesn't have to hurt. Later that afternoon, as Sarah was getting ready to leave for a work function, she paused at the front door. David, that night when Marta made her toast, do you ever wish you'd handled it differently? I thought about it. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just walked away, kept quiet, filed for divorce privately, handled everything with discretion. Do you regret the way you did it? No, I said without hesitation. She humiliated me in front of our friends and family. She deserved the same treatment. Sarah nodded. Good, because the man who would have just walked away quietly, he wouldn't have been strong enough to build something new. After she left, I spent the evening organizing my home office, filing away the last of the divorce papers and clearing out boxes of old photos and mementos from my marriage to Marta. At the bottom of one box, I found the guest list from that infamous dinner party 6 months ago. 8 names, including mine and Marta's. I wondered where they all were now, what they thought about that night and everything that followed. Mike and Tom, my old friends who'd chosen Marta's side, I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that they were struggling in their own marriages now. Funny how quickly people judge until they face similar challenges themselves. Greg's name was crossed out in red ink, a reminder of how thoroughly he'd destroyed his own life in pursuit of someone else's wife. And at the bottom of the list, in Marta's handwriting, perfect evening with perfect friends. I laughed out loud at the irony. It had been perfect in a way, perfectly catastrophic, perfectly revealing, perfectly necessary. I tore up the list and threw it in the trash, then poured myself a scotch and sat in my living room, looking around at the space that was finally completely mine. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, without the weight of secrets and lies pressing down on it. I'd redecorated, gotten rid of most of the furniture Marta had chosen, replaced it with things I actually liked. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Ross calling from his summer job in Chicago. Hey, Dad, just wanted to check in. I'm good, son. Really good. I'm glad. You sound different. Happier. I am happier, I admitted. It took me a while to realize it, but I am. Mom called me last week, Ross said carefully. She wanted me to ask you something. My stomach tightened. What? She wanted to know if you'd consider talking to her. She says she has things she wants to say that she couldn't put in the letter. What did you tell her? I told her that was your decision to make, not mine. I sipped my scotch and considered it. Part of me was curious about what Marta wanted to say. But a bigger part of me knew that conversation would serve no purpose except to reopen old wounds. Tell her I got the letter, I said finally. Tell her I appreciate the apology, but also tell her that I've moved on, and I think it's best if she does the same. Okay, Dad. I think that's probably wise. After we hung up, I walked out to my back deck and looked up at the stars. It was a clear night, the kind where you could see the Milky Way stretching across the sky. 6 months ago, I'd thought my life was over. My marriage was ending, my friends were abandoning me, and I was facing an uncertain future alone. But here I was, engaged to a wonderful woman, closer to my children than I'd been in years, and more at peace with myself than I'd ever been. Marta's toast had been meant to humiliate me, to put me in my place and remind me of my inadequacies. Instead, it had freed me from a marriage built on lies and set me on a path towards something real. I raised my glass to the night sky. To the toast that burned the house down, I said aloud, and to the life that rose from the ashes. As I stood there in the darkness, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete contentment. Not happiness exactly. That would come and go. But a deep, abiding sense that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The old David would have been terrified of starting over at 47. The new David couldn't wait to see what came next. I finished my drink and went inside, turning off the lights and locking up for the night. Tomorrow, Sarah and I were looking at venues for our wedding. Next month, the kids would be home for a visit. Next year, who knew what adventures awaited? But tonight, I was simply grateful. Grateful for the betrayal that had opened my eyes. Grateful for the humiliation that had given me strength. Grateful for the ending that had become a beginning. As I headed upstairs to bed, I paused at the mirror in the hallway and looked at my reflection. The man staring back at me was older than the one who'd sat through Marta's toast 6 months ago, but he was also stronger, wiser, and infinitely more at peace. Well done, I told him. Well done indeed. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I meant it.